We watched them line up like it was a goddamn parade. They thought they had us, thought their cloaking grids were untraceable, their formations invisible. They even ran jamming pulses just under our detection threshold. Smart, calculated, precise. Like every other arrogant alien species we'd met in the past 20 years, they believed they had humans figured out. That we'd panic, that we'd break ranks, that we'd do what we always did. Adapt too slow, react too late, bleed too much. But this time, they were playing on our stage. I was sitting in the CIC of the Harbinger, 3rd Fleet flagship, sipping bitter synthetic coffee like I didn't have 2,000 souls waiting on my word. The bridge was quiet, low-lit, tension thick enough to crush a grown man's chest. My XO stood by the tack table, eyes scanning the floating projections of the sector, red arcs, blue rings, shifting lines of engagement, the usual chaos before contact. Final confirmation? I asked. Intercepted comms pinged again 10 minutes ago, he said. Same encoded pattern. Confirmed alien fleet is moving into position Theta. He paused. Exactly like we projected. No deviation. I didn't smile. I didn't blink. I just nodded. They thought we didn't see it coming. But we'd cracked their ciphers weeks ago. Every movement, every maneuver. We watched it unfold in real time. We let them build their perfect little trap. Let them believe we'd walk straight into it. Because we wanted them to. Bring the Ghost Dagger formation into drift space, I ordered. Tell Commander Hale to hold until the second wave jumps, not before. The CIC snapped to motion. Orders relayed. Data flying. Ships shifting in silent harmony. There's a special kind of fear you feel when you're being hunted. But there's a colder feeling when you are the hunter. And they just don't know it yet. The enemy fleet, we called them the Threxians, had been bleeding us for months. Raids, ambushes, forced evacuations. Always 2 steps ahead. Until they got cocky. Until they started transmitting on encrypted channels that weren't so encrypted anymore. They'd studied us, our formations, our failure patterns. Hell, maybe even our language. But they missed the one thing every alien empire before them missed. Humans adapt faster when we're bleeding. We'd lost the 2nd Fleet at Vega 9. 53 ships gone. My brother was on the Orion Pike. Vaporized. Never got a body back. That's when I stopped fighting to protect. That's when I started fighting to pay it back. So I spent weeks in a Black Ops lab with techs and codebreakers, tearing apart Threxian comm signals, mapping out the gaps in their tactics. We fed them false recon through scrubbed satellites and ghost pings, let them believe we were disorganized, wounded, frightened. Today was the payoff. They were converging on our supposed rally point in grid Delta 19. 81 enemy vessels, 3 carrier-class warships. They'd timed their approach with lunar shadow, assuming our fleet sensors wouldn't catch them in the dark band. Maybe in the old days, they'd have been right. But we weren't those humans anymore. The fleet moved like ghosts through slip space. Silent jumps. No light. No trails. We weren't headed to Delta 19. We were surrounding it. Every ship in my command had a target. We'd calculated the angles, synchronized the strike windows down to a 1/10 of a second. And when their War Council ships lit up that dead moon, expecting to see crippled human survivors, they'd see nothing. Then, they'd feel the temperature drop. They'd hear the static crack of our disruptor fields. And they'd know. Too late. I stood at the front viewport now, watching space ripple ahead as our ship entered final approach vector. My hand hovered over the intercom switch. Broadcast to all human ships, I said. Code phrase, burn the sky. The XO nodded once. Burn the sky sent, sir. It was a simple phrase, but every pilot, every gunner, every commander knew what it meant. No survivors, no retreat, no mercy. The first time I saw a Threxian ship up close, it reminded me of a cancerous tumor, ugly, twisted, alive in a way it shouldn't be. Their ships weren't built like ours. They weren't forged from steel and logic. They were grown, layered with organic plating that pulsed faintly, like breath in a dying animal. I remember staring at the vid feed when one of our recon drones got too close during the Draymar conflict, and I said out loud without thinking, "What the hell is that thing?" No one answered. The Threxians didn't build ships for elegance or power. They built them to infect. Their beam cannons weren't designed to blow you apart instantly. No, they wanted you to feel your ship melting around you, your oxygen bleeding into space, your crew screaming until comms cut out. Every design they had was meant to kill slowly, cruelly. Efficient? Not always. Psychological? Every damn time. And now those same twisted ships were drifting right into our trap. "Time to contact?" I asked, eyes still locked on the tactical display. 7 minutes to target entry. Ghost dagger formation will breach on your command, my XO replied. "Good. Hold them steady." The Ghost Daggers, a Black Ops strike team of 4 Corvette-class ships, had been modified to run dark through nearly any detection field. Cloaked, no emissions, no lights. The only reason we even called them ships was because they had a hull. Everything else was a weapon or a lie. And right now, they were parked less than 4,000 kilometers off the lead Threxian warship, lying in wait like knives in the dark. I leaned on the edge of the console and pulled up the secondary projection. Thermal overlays, biosignature echoes, field fluctuations. Our entire fleet was invisible to the Threxians, but we could see them clear as day. They had no idea we were here. I should have felt satisfaction. Maybe a thrill. But all I felt was tired. Tired of counting bodies. Tired of playing smart so we wouldn't have to bleed as much. Tired of pretending it wasn't personal anymore. Because it was personal. They'd taken too many. Friends, crew, my brother. Whole colonies burned because someone in the Threxian hierarchy decided humans were too noisy, that we didn't belong beyond our solar system, that we were a disease. Well, maybe they were right, because tonight we were going to infect them back. The comm crackled softly. Fleet-wide silence holding. Dagger units confirm visual lock. Awaiting engagement. I pressed the talk key. "This is Fleet Commander Renner. All units, hold position. Do not fire until primary beam arrays reach burn charge. We strike together or not at all." They acknowledged. Then silence returned. We'd never been this close to their command fleet. We'd danced around their war caravans, hit their supply chains, crushed their scouting parties. But this was the head of the serpent. 3 command-class carriers, flanked by destroyers and wall crawlers, with a dozen support vessels, cycling in a formation that screamed overconfidence. They weren't even scanning anymore. That's how sure they were we'd walk into their little ambush like sheep to slaughter. I watched one of the carriers adjust course. Maybe a minor correction in orbit drift, maybe a flex of control. That was the Juralzek, if our intel was right. And sitting at its center, like some bloated insect on a throne, was High Strategist Verun. He was the bastard who ordered the Vega 9 culling. My brother's death? That had his name on it. Today, I'd carve it off. 5 minutes out. One of the destroyers broke formation slightly, likely adjusting for tactical drift. Their biovessels were always compensating. They didn't operate on logic. They reacted to environment. But our movement signatures had been so minimal, so coordinated, even the Threxian instincts weren't triggering alarms. We'd built this ambush pixel by pixel, every move drawn like a surgeon preparing for a perfect incision. And now we were within striking distance. The fleet was ready. The Ghost Daggers were locked in. Still, I waited, because they weren't done making mistakes. Another 3 minutes passed. That's when it happened. One of their patrol cutters deployed, likely a routine sweep. It swept left toward one of our relay nodes, invisible in the shadow of the planet's rings. I watched it on the screen, a tiny blip crossing a silent grave. Then the feed cut out. Not a warning. Not an alert, just static. I straightened. Relay 5 just went dark, I said. The XO was already tapping into diagnostics. No energy spikes, no weapons discharge, just stopped broadcasting. Could be interference. Could be. Could be. But in war, could be gets people killed. I leaned in closer. Ping the ghost dagger nearest that zone. I want visual recon. He nodded and relayed the signal. A few seconds passed before the return came in. Raw, unfiltered vid feed from a stealth ship drifting near the cutter's path. I squinted at the display. The Threxian patrol vessel had stopped. No movement. No turn. Just still. Magnify thermal. The screen flared orange, then settled. No heat signature. No activity. It's dead, the XO muttered. Not from us, I replied. Another trap? Or a failsafe? My stomach turned. For a moment I considered pulling back, letting the Threxians pass and saving our fleet for another day. But no. They wanted to ambush us. They wanted to make an example out of humanity. Now they'd get one. Engage the signal, I ordered. Fleet command to all units. Begin Phase 1. Initiate full strike. The space in front of us lit up like a sun going nova. Dozens of human warships dropped cloak and opened fire in unison. The ghost daggers were first, their precision beams slicing straight into the lead carrier's outer hull. The Juralzek never saw it coming. 1 second they were coasting in arrogance. The next, they were bleeding atmosphere and alien screams into the void. Then came the main fleet, disruptor rounds, kinetic railguns, plasma lances, every weapon we had, synchronized to kill fast and brutally. The Threxians finally reacted. But it was too late. Their destroyers pivoted awkwardly, weapons charging, but we were already inside their range windows. One of our battlecruisers, the Aegis 13, rammed straight into the side of a Threxian escort ship, locking its hull before self-detonating. 32 humans died to kill one ship. That's the math we accepted, because the numbers didn't matter anymore, only the message did. You don't fucking with humanity and walk away. The Harbinger fired volley after volley, cutting into the side of the second carrier. I watched its hull buckle, split open, and spill glowing alien tissue across the void. Their ships didn't die like ours. They bled. A sick, wet kind of death that made the stars look diseased. We pushed forward. I barked out orders, moved formations, tracked enemy resistance. They tried to regroup. Their central carrier peeled off, flanked by 2 support crafts, attempting a retreat vector. Target the escape route, I said coldly. Missiles flew. 2 human destroyers swung wide and cut the Threxian escape clean in half. The carrier exploded, pieces of its living hull scattering across the void like broken wings. They were finished. They just didn't know it yet. But then something shifted. A new signal blipped onto our screens, large, fast, approaching from beyond the system's fringe. I froze. Contact. Massive energy signature, my XO reported. It's not in their main formation. This is something else. Identify it. He paused, scanning. Unknown Threxian designation. No records. Looks new. I narrowed my eyes. Was this their ace? Had we missed something? The screen lit up as the new ship exited slipspace. It dwarfed the carriers, long, sleek, pulsing with unnatural light. It didn't look grown like the others. It looked forged. Is that a Threxian ship? I muttered. Structure says yes. Design says no. Then it fired. A beam unlike anything we'd seen cut across the field. One of our cruisers vanished in an instant, vaporized, no debris, no wreckage, nothing. Just gone. The bridge went silent. I stepped forward, jaw clenched. What in hell did they just deploy? No answer. Only that ship turning toward our fleet like it knew exactly where to hit next. We'd won the ambush, but the war had just escalated. We thought we'd finished the fight. We thought the trap had worked, the carriers had burned, and the last of the Threxian elite were bleeding out into the void. We had them, boxed in, overwhelmed, and too damn slow to respond to our precision. Every kill had been clean, every move calculated. But that thing, that ship, wasn't part of the plan, and now it was here, staring us down like it had been waiting. I stood at the center of the CIC, fists clenched behind my back, watching the projection of the new vessel flicker on the holotable. It didn't move like the others. It didn't drift or pulse. It held still in the dead of space, unmoving, its long spear-like structure almost unnerving in its symmetry. The others were grown, yes, twisted, wet, half-organic monstrosities. But this thing? It was cold, smooth, engineered. "Talk to me," I said. "What are we looking at?" My exo's voice was tight. "Design matrix doesn't match any previous Threxian ship class. No organic residue, no bioheat. It's reading pure alloy, black titanium. Looks like a weapon platform more than a warship." "What kind of weapon?" He didn't answer. Instead, the screen flickered. The ship's undercarriage split open, like metal wings unfolding, and then came the sound. Not an explosion. A pulse. Not auditory. Deeper. Everyone on the bridge winced at once, even though there was nothing on the comms. I felt it in my bones, like my skull had just been cracked with sound. Something inside my head buzzed, not outside, and I wasn't the only one. "Neural interference?" I asked, gritting my teeth. The comms officer replied with a shaken voice. "Something's pinging every frequency, including neural uplinks. We're being scanned, but it's not digital." "It's biological. A scan that doesn't use code." That meant it wasn't just trying to detect us. It was trying to read us. I stared at the projection of the ship again. It wasn't just an ace in their pocket. It was something they'd built for us. We tried to counter. "Scramble our signal masks," I ordered. "Initiate code black, block every frequency and pull analog backup lines." The CIC snapped into action. Old-school cables were activated. Neural uplinks were shut down manually, each crew member unplugging from their ports and relying on voice command and key inputs. That was the plan in case of psychic interference or hacking attacks. We'd trained for it, but no one had ever tested it against this. My ship, the Harbinger, was a Titan-class battlecruiser, designed during the Earth-Mars border wars. Meant to take a nuke to the spine and still fire back. The strongest shielding humanity had ever built wrapped around our core. And even we felt weak in that moment. Because this wasn't just about armor. This was about presence. That ship out there made space feel smaller. "Status of enemy remnants?" I asked. My exo checked the feed. 2 carriers are disabled. One's venting. Most of the support ships are scattered, fleeing, or adrift. Only 2 destroyers still have powered weapon systems, and they're falling back. "Good. Let them go." He blinked. "Sir?" "If they survive, they'll spread the message. Humans aren't prey anymore." He didn't argue. He knew I wasn't interested in total annihilation today, just reputation. But now we had a new problem. The unknown vessel started to move. Not fast, just adrift, barely a few meters per second. It pivoted slightly toward us, and then its undercarriage closed. The wings folded back in. The energy buildup we detected earlier vanished. No radiation, no heat spike, no weapon charge. It just sat there. I didn't trust silence. Silence in war meant someone was setting the next board, and I hate playing second. "Bring our main rail array to bear," I ordered. The weapons officer blinked. "Sir, that will paint our profile." "I don't care. Aim for its spinal core. Let's see if this thing bleeds." Charging a main rail array required a full 4-minute energy buildup. It wasn't a subtle maneuver. The ship's heat signature would spike, and we'd reveal our exact position to any scanning eyes. But we had no choice. I wasn't going to wait for that thing to hit us first. The bridge dimmed slightly as the power rerouted. The main gun, a long, spine-mounted rail launcher, charged from its magnetic nodes outward, the targeting systems locked in. I narrowed my eyes at the projection. We only had one shot before it reacted. 2 minutes to charge," the weapons officer called. I waited. Then the ship spoke. Not with language, not with audio, but every person on the bridge suddenly froze. We felt it at the same time, like a thought that wasn't ours, whispering in the back of the mind, a pressure on the spine, a presence sliding behind your eyes. Not words, exactly, but emotion, memory, meaning. I saw images, rapid, jarring flashes, dead planets, human ships, our ships, burning in alien gravity wells, experiments, test chambers, screams. I saw a child floating in zero gravity, breath gone, eyes wide, watching as a Threxian spliced open her mother. I stumbled back from the console, breath shallow. "What the fuck was that?" my XO gasped. The weapons officer wiped sweat from his brow. "I think it was trying to show us something." "No, not just show. Warn." "This is a psi weapon," I said. "That ship's not just physical, it's a projection unit." The comms officer looked pale. "Sir, this isn't Threxian. This is something else." I nodded slowly. "They didn't build it. They found it." That made more sense than anything. The Threxians were savages, opportunists. They stole tech, absorbed species, consumed worlds, but they didn't invent like we did. They didn't forge cold logic into steel. They mimicked biology, not power. This ship didn't belong to them, which meant they weren't hunting us anymore. They were testing it on us. "Abort the main rail," I said quickly. "Do not engage." My crew hesitated. They wanted to kill it, I understood. But this wasn't about rage anymore. We were standing on the edge of something we didn't understand. And if we fired too early, we might trigger something we couldn't stop. "Hold weapons," I repeated. "Just hold." The bridge was silent. The ship, whatever it was, drifted forward, slowly, 1 meter per second. No visible propulsion, no heat, but then the stars behind it began to warp, like glass bending. "Spatial lensing," my XO said in shock. "It's tearing a fold." A wormhole. The ship was leaving. I stepped closer to the viewport. "Track its signature. I want every reading, every frequency. Don't let it vanish without a trace." They worked fast. The sensors screamed. Gravitational patterns twisted. And then the ship slipped through the fold. Gone. Space was normal again. We didn't cheer. We didn't sigh. We just stood there, sweating in our suits, blinking at empty stars. That thing had watched us, tested us, reached into us. It didn't fire, it didn't speak, it didn't need to. It wanted to know if humanity was worth worrying about. And now it did. "Fleet status?" I asked finally. The XO recovered his voice. "Minimal damage. 1 cruiser lost. Minor injuries on 3 destroyers. Energy capacity dropping across the board." "Enemy?" "All Threxian ships disabled or scattered. They won't regroup in this sector for a long time." "Then we hold position. Start recovery. Search the wreckage for black box data. I want to know everything about what that ship saw." He nodded. "Also," I turned to comms, Send this message to High Command. Priority Alpha. The Threxians are no longer the primary threat. I stayed on the bridge for 6 hours straight after that. Didn't move, didn't blink much, just watched, because that ship hadn't just changed the course of a battle, it had changed the board. And I had a gut feeling we weren't the first species it had tested. But if we played this right, we just might be the first to survive it. They gave us victory, but it didn't feel like one. Not when half the crew was still staring into space like they'd seen a ghost. Not when every console blinked with damaged readings from systems that were never even touched. Not when my fingers trembled every time I tried to hold a stylus. That ship, whatever the hell it was, didn't fire a single shot at the Harbinger, yet it left behind something heavier than debris. Doubt. And in war, doubt is worse than wounds. 3 hours into recovery ops, we still hadn't heard a single word from the Threxian remnants. No counterattack, no reinforcements, no distress signals. It was like their entire fleet had gone dark. The last of their broken ships had limped off into deep space without a fight. That's not how they operated. Threxians were vicious, stubborn bastards. Even when they were losing, they'd throw suicide wings at us just to leave a scar. But not this time. This time they ran and didn't look back. That told me something important. They weren't in control of what we'd just faced. That ship wasn't theirs. They had tried to use it, aim it at us. But the moment it looked back at them, they folded. Just like we almost did. So I didn't care about their silence. I wasn't looking over my shoulder waiting for their second wave. Because I knew something worse had already marked us. I stepped into the medbay. The air was thick with antiseptic mist and the hum of low-grade neural stabilizers. Half the crew was on the beds, wired up, eyes flickering behind shut lids. Most were stable. A few weren't. I found Lieutenant Harrow in the back corner. Young, sharp, usually cocky as hell. We called him Sunshine because he never shut up about surviving the worst with a smile. Now he just sat there. Blank stare, hands shaking. "Report," I said to the medic. She looked up, tired. "He's got no neurological trauma, no concussion, no stroke, nothing physically wrong. But he's not responding. He doesn't speak. He reacts to light, touch, temperature, but not language." I stepped closer. His eyes were open, locked on the ceiling. Breathing normal. Skin color normal. No pupil dilation. Just gone. Others like this? 3 more. All were in direct neural uplink when the ship pulsed us. So their minds were still open. She nodded, and that thing walked right in. I dismissed her and sat beside Harrow. For a second, I said nothing. Just watched him. Then I leaned forward, elbows on knees. "You're not broken," I said. "You're just stuck in something that wasn't meant for humans to see." His eye twitched, not random, focused. "Lieutenant," I said quietly, "did it show you something?" His mouth moved, no sound, just shapes. Then, finally, one word. "Seeds." My spine went cold. "What seeds?" But he was gone again, back into that frozen stare. "Get him under blackout treatment," I ordered. "Full sensory deprivation. No light, no sound, no input. Let the mind reset." The medic hesitated. That could shut down his language pathways permanently. It could also keep him from tearing his own mind apart. Do it. I left without waiting for argument. We were running out of time. Back on the bridge, the wreckage analysis had just come through. The sensor team had compiled all data from the brief encounter with the unknown ship, what we were now calling Object 01. My XO ran the briefing. We tracked over 17 separate energy spikes from the vessel, each on a different frequency. Some are electromagnetic, others, we don't know. They could be gravitational, they could be quantum. We don't have a frame of reference. "What about the structure?" I asked. He tapped the console. A 3D model spun slowly above the table. "No joints, no welds, no organic tissue, one solid alloy. The metal doesn't match anything in our galactic periodic scans, doesn't absorb heat, doesn't reflect light in the UV spectrum. So it's invisible to most known sensors. Unless you're already looking right at it? Yes. I stared at the model. It looked like a blade, a massive one. Any idea what it was doing before it jumped? He hesitated. Then, it wasn't just observing us, it was recording. He pulled up waveform scans. This signal here? He pointed to a sharp spike. That wasn't broadcast, it was received. Something sent a pulse back to the ship just before it jumped. Something farther out. Where? He tapped a star chart. The outer system, past the Kuvar belt. No known planets, no known stations, but something called it. I leaned against the table, thinking. We'd just wiped out a major Threxian strike force. We'd turned an ambush into a bloodbath. But this wasn't about them anymore. This was about whatever built Object 01. Whatever was waiting out there. Watching. Testing. My XO's voice broke the silence. Commander, if they're watching us, then we just revealed all our tactics, our weapons, our protocols. They wanted us to win, I muttered. He looked confused. Why? Because we're not the enemy, not yet. We're the next lab rats. I didn't call High Command. I knew what they'd do. They'd panic, or worse, they'd launch preemptive strikes, start probing missions, try to capture one of these things. And the moment they did, the thing we fought wouldn't just send one scout ship next time. It'd send whatever made the Threxians run. And we weren't ready for that. Instead, I called someone I hadn't spoken to in 3 years. Vice Admiral Corvin. He wasn't stationed in any fleet. He wasn't listed on any official register. But every captain knew the name. Corvin ran Project Arcos, the classified Black Division tasked with monitoring ancient alien structures discovered in deep space, forbidden tech, pre-contact civilizations, weapons that made nukes look like firecrackers. If anyone had seen something like this before, it was him. He picked up after 2 rings. Renner, he said. His voice was like gravel soaked in whiskey. Didn't expect your name to pop up unless a war ended or a planet cracked. It might be both, I said. I gave him the report. The ambush, the alien ship, the psychic pulse, the retreat, the survivors, and the seeds. That word stuck with him. He didn't interrupt, just listened. When I finished, there was a long pause. Then he said something I wasn't expecting. You're not the first to see one. He told me about an incident in the Nadir Fringe 16 years ago. A small research vessel stumbled across an object in deep drift. Lifeless, silent, shaped like a blade. They brought it aboard. 2 days later, the ship stopped transmitting. A week later, it returned on autopilot. No crew. Everyone was dead. Not mutilated, not murdered, just shut down. Nervous systems fried. Brains empty. Hearts still beating. He said it was like they'd forgotten how to live. The object was missing. Why didn't you tell anyone? I asked. Corvin snorted. Because anyone who looks too closely at these things ends up with holes in their memory or bleeding from their eyes. You think I want Fleet Command throwing a recovery party for something that can stare into your mind? I clenched my jaw. So what do we do? Burn the data, keep your mouth shut, and move your fleet away from that system before it calls more of them. That didn't sit right with me. So we run. We live, he said. That's the best we can hope for. But I couldn't do it. Not after Vega 9, not after what they'd done to us, what they'd done to my crew. We'd walked into a perfect trap and turned it into a message. Now we had the attention of something worse, and I wasn't going to wait for it to come knocking. I was going to find it first. As I stood there, staring out at the ruined field of broken ships and debris glowing faintly in the blackness, one thought came to me louder than anything else. What if this wasn't the test? What if this was the invitation? Most people think defiance looks like shouting in a courtroom or slamming fists on a table in front of your superior officer. They're wrong. Real defiance is silence. Quiet signatures, unmarked jump coordinates, blank logs, deleted orders. It's a fleet of warships leaving a combat zone under the official cover of sensor recalibration, when what they're actually doing is chasing a ghost into the dark. That's what we were now. A rogue operation flying blind into the Kuvar belt, deeper than any sanctioned fleet had ever gone. No escort, no reinforcements, no backup. We weren't waiting for war to find us again. We were going to knock on its door. Vice Admiral Corvin told me to run, and in a way, I agreed with him. Maybe I should have. Maybe we should have packed up the dead, logged the victory, and limped back to Earth. There'd be medals, speeches, a press leak about how the human fleet repelled a massive Threxian ambush with minimal losses. But none of that meant anything to me, because I'd seen what that ship did to my crew. And deep down, I knew the Threxians weren't the real enemy anymore. Hell, they were probably running from the same thing. They just hoped we'd be the next ones to bleed in their place. Not this time. Approaching coordinates, my XO said from the console. We'd tracked the faint echo of Object 01's energy trail, residual distortions left in the Kuvar gravitational curtain. Most ships wouldn't have picked it up, but we'd ripped apart a dozen black boxes from the Threxian wreckage and fed the data through every illegal algorithm I had clearance for. It was faint, but it was there. Ready slipstream calibration, I said. The Harbinger's engines purred like restrained wolves. Jump drives online, full power routed through cold coils. Fleet sync confirmed. All ships ready to enter fold space on your mark. I stared into the void. Mark. Space folded. It's not like the vids. It doesn't feel like wind or speed or rushing stars. It feels like drowning in numbers, like your brain can't keep up with how wrong reality just got. And then, in an instant, it all snaps back. Black, cold, silent. Jump complete, came the report. All ships accounted for. I stepped toward the viewport, and my breath caught in my chest. It wasn't a system. It was a graveyard, an entire planetary cluster. 4, maybe 5 planets, all shattered. Not by collision, not by decay, by design. Chopped. Burned. Hollowed out like someone reached in and scooped out the cores. Dead moons drifted like broken teeth. Even the star at the center looked wrong. Dim. Sickly. Like it had been drained. This place isn't on any chart, my XO said. No records, no scout missions. This isn't uninhabited. It's erased. I stared at the orbital patterns, at the craters carved with surgical precision, at the mineral traces glowing faint blue along the asteroid belts. I'd seen those before. Same metal readings as Object 01. We weren't the first ones to see it. We were just the first ones to survive it. Launch probes, I ordered. Start mapping every inch of this system. Full spectrum scans, no delays. The drones launched silently from the hangar bays, dozens of them, each with a single mission. Find whatever left this mess behind. It didn't take long. Got something, a tech called. Object, central belt, low drift, looks artificial. I moved to the feed. There it was, buried in the asteroid field, barely visible even with scan enhancement. A structure. It wasn't just metal. It wasn't even just alien. It was alive, pulsing faintly. Lights blinking in slow, timed intervals. Not broadcasting, but still aware. I didn't need a scientist to tell me what it was. A relay. A beacon. This is where it sent the signal, I muttered. This is what called it back. And if it was still pulsing, that meant something was still listening. Sir, the XO said carefully. You want to hit it? I looked at the screen, at that thing pulsing between rocks like a heartbeat in a corpse. No, I want to board it. They say courage is walking into fire. That's not true either. Real courage is strapping on a suit, knowing there's no signal, no rescue, no backup, and stepping into something your species wasn't meant to touch. The boarding skiff launched with only 3 of us on board. Myself, Sergeant Tenor, our heavy weapons specialist, and Talo, our sensor tech. Talo didn't talk much, but he had a reputation for making alien systems talk. That's why I brought him. We drifted toward the beacon. It didn't react, didn't open, didn't blink, just waited. We docked. The outer shell was smooth, like obsidian. No seams, no airlocks. But when our magnetic clamp touched it, a crack appeared. Not from us, from it. A seam opened, just wide enough for one person to slip through. Talo stared at it like it was death itself. You sure about this? No, I said. But we're going anyway. Inside, it was cold. Not space cold. Dead cold. Like it had never been warm to begin with. No gravity, no sound. Just a long corridor that seemed to stretch farther than physics should allow. Lights pulsed along the walls. Each one blinked twice as we passed. 2 blinks, always 2. Talo whispered, "That's not random." I know. Some kind of counting? Or scanning, I muttered. We found the core chamber. A sphere hovering mid-air filled with rotating rings made of the same black titanium alloy. Floating around it were small shards, like data slivers, each one etched with markings we couldn't read. Sergeant Tenor raised his gun. Permission to shoot? No, I said. That thing's not a weapon. It's a receiver. And then it lit up. All the lights shifted from white to blue, then to red. And I heard it again. Not sound, not speech, but thought. Not in my ear, not in my head. In my bones, like something was reaching into the DNA of my ancestors and pulling out the truth. I saw Earth. I saw the moon. I saw us, not as we are, but as we could become. And then I saw fire. I snapped back, gasping. The room was dark again. Silent. The lights were gone. Talo was on the floor, twitching, nose bleeding. Tenor was aiming his weapon in every direction. "Sir, what the hell was that?" I didn't answer, because I didn't have one. I just stared at the sphere, and realized it wasn't scanning us. It was judging us. We pulled back. Talo was unconscious, muttering something over and over under his breath. Not ready, not ready, not ready. He kept repeating it all the way back to the skiff, back to the Harbinger. And when we docked, the ship's sensors picked up something new, another distortion. Same pattern as Object 01. But this one wasn't just entering the system. It was already here. "Sir," the XO said with a pale face, "we have multiple contacts." "How many?" He turned. 4. I moved to the viewport. And sure enough, 4 identical ships. Same blade design. Same zero-emission profile. Same presence. But this time, they didn't pulse. They didn't scan. They just watched. "Stand by weapons," I ordered. "No targeting, no fire. Not unless they fire first." The ships moved slowly, positioning themselves around the beacon we'd just left. And then, a voice, real this time, crackling through our internal comms, not on any known frequency. "Observation complete. Judgment inconclusive." Everyone froze. The voice was flat, mechanical, not synthetic, empty, and it continued. "Species, adaptive, resistant, primitive, threat level, unknown. Further analysis required. Observation units will remain." I swallowed hard. "Remain where?" "Everywhere." The signal cut. The ships didn't move again. But deep in my gut, I knew what that meant. This wasn't an attack. This wasn't a war. This was surveillance. And the worst part? They hadn't even made a decision yet. We weren't enemies. We weren't allies. We were subjects. I stepped back from the console. No words, no anger, just a deep, hollow knowledge. We had stepped into something older than war, older than stars. And whatever it was, it had just added humanity to its watch list. It only took 6 hours after the report was sent for Earth Command to go into full meltdown. No, thank you for saving the fleet. No, good work turning the tide. Just immediate. Cold silence followed by a formal recall order with a threat of court-martial if I didn't comply. Standard protocol, really. Kill the conversation before it spreads. Control the narrative. They'd rather bury an inconvenient truth than admit humanity just got put under surveillance by something that could blink us out of existence. They didn't even want the data. They wanted the silence. But it was already too late for that. The signal those ships left behind was still active. It wasn't broadcasting. It wasn't communicating. It was just there. Like a warning label stamped onto reality itself. The 4 observation units, as they called themselves, remained perfectly motionless in orbit around the shattered beacon system. They didn't move. They didn't scan. But they watched. We couldn't detect any visual sensors, no heat traces, no radiation pulses. But somehow we felt it. Every crew member said the same thing. It's like they're staring through my skin. We stopped sleeping, stopped eating right, and worst of all, we stopped talking to each other, because no one wanted to say the one thing we were all thinking. What if this is just the beginning? I sent a priority message to Earth Command again. I attached encrypted sensor logs, audio from the beacon relay, the psychic pulse recordings, and full details on Lieutenant Harrow's condition. I included the phrase, "The enemy is not Threxian anymore. We are not alone. We were never alone." They didn't respond. Instead, they shut down my ship's remote comm systems. We were cut off. Fleet silence order, level 9 classification. Which meant only one thing. They were afraid. And fear makes bureaucrats do stupid things. We were ordered to return to L Station Earth Point, the massive orbital platform on the edge of Earth's exosphere, a place meant to house dignitaries, high-ranking officers, and crisis responders in case of system-wide emergencies. We weren't even allowed to land on Earth itself. No, welcome back. No parades, just sterile metal halls and armed guards at every door. As soon as we docked, I was escorted by a silent 4-man security unit. No handcuffs. That would have made it too obvious. But I wasn't being honored. I was being contained. They brought me into a clean room. White walls, no windows, 1 table, 2 chairs, and a glass panel on one side. 2 men entered 5 minutes later. No uniforms, no names. The suits, the real power. One of them sat. The other stood behind him, hands clasped, face blank like a machine. "Commander Renner," the seated one said, "you've caused quite a problem." "Funny," I said. "I thought I saved a fleet." He ignored that. "You disobeyed direct recall orders. You took your fleet into uncharted space without authorization. You engaged a non-hostile object without political clearance, and worst of all, you documented it." I leaned forward, slow. "You know what I saw." "We've seen the footage," he said flatly. "We've read the logs." "Then you know they're watching." "Of course. And you're doing nothing?" "We're doing what humanity has always done when faced with the unknown, Commander." He smiled faintly. "We're pretending it didn't happen." There it was. No metaphor, no spin, just the raw cowardice I'd expected. They weren't going to tell anyone. Not the colonies. Not the civilian governments. Not even the fleet admirals beyond level 8 clearance. Because if people knew, Panic, mass desertion, civil unrest, collapse. So instead of preparing, they'd rather close their eyes and pretend we still controlled the stars. "Let me speak to the Defense Council," I said. "No." "To High Admiral Delrin. Classified. To anyone who's not a coward hiding behind a desk." The standing man took a step forward, hand on stun trigger, but the seated one raised his hand. "Don't," he said quietly. "He's not a threat." Then he leaned closer. "But if you leak a single byte of what you saw, Commander, you'll be labeled a rogue asset. And you know what we do with those." I smiled. "Send another fleet." They ended the meeting. I was released back to my ship, but half my crew had already been rotated out. New faces, quiet, obedient officers. The kind who follow orders even when they know they're wrong. The kind who don't ask what's watching us. But not all of them were gone. My XO, Jane, was still there. Somehow. Probably because he hadn't written half the intel reports like I had. I found him in the observation deck, sitting alone, watching Earth spin lazily below. He didn't look up when I entered. "They're going to do nothing," he said. "Aren't they?" I sat down beside him. "No. They're going to do worse than nothing." He glanced at me. "They're going to lie." We stared at the planet in silence. Blue, green, beautiful, and totally unprepared. Jane finally spoke again. "You know what the crew's saying?" "What?" "That Object 01 didn't come to kill us." I nodded. "Yeah. They say it came to warn us." I looked at him, slow. "Warn us of what?" He turned back toward Earth and said, flatly, "That we're next." Back on the bridge, I reviewed the encrypted logs again, over and over, searching for anything we missed, some detail buried in the readings, some pattern in the psychic pulse. That's when I noticed it. A numerical sequence, 17 digits, repeating in every echo. Tallow hadn't noticed it before. Neither had I. But it was there, a coordinate string, a location, far from Earth, deep in unclaimed space, not mapped by Threxians, humans, or any known species, and at the center of that coordinate cluster, a signal. Same frequency as the original pulse, buried, dormant, calling. I looked at Join, and I said the words I knew would damn us both. "Prep the jump drives, we're going dark." His eyes didn't waver. "You want to go deeper?" I nodded. "I want to know the truth." Because Earth wasn't going to save us. Not the admirals, not the diplomats. If we were going to survive this, we needed to understand who built the Watchers and what they were watching for. There's a kind of silence out here that doesn't exist anywhere else. It's not the peaceful kind, like on Earth's mountaintops or the ocean at night. No. This is the silence of a place that was never meant to be found. A place where stars die quietly, and no one bothers to record their names. A place so deep into uncharted black, it's not even labeled unknown in our maps. It's just left blank. That's where we were now, off-grid, beyond any jump beacon, no fleet relay in range. We were riding a trail left behind in a 17-digit coordinate string, buried inside the mind of a comatose crewman. A string we almost didn't catch. A place no one had logged in all of human expansion. And still, something had once been here. Maybe still was. We made the jump 3 hours after decoupling from Earth Point Station under the radar. Jane handled most of the cloak protocols. I issued a fake systems failure alert through the maintenance channels, flagged the Harbinger as needing immediate diagnostics at a ghost dock near the Saturn Drift. It bought us time. Just not enough. Because I knew the moment we vanished from Earth space without clearance, the suits would come looking. But by the time they caught up, we'd be too far to follow. The transition into fold space was harsher than usual. Long-range jumps always are, especially without relay buffers. The crew came out of it shaking. One of the nav techs threw up in his helmet. Another passed out cold. I couldn't blame them. We weren't meant to go this far alone. "System stabilizing," Jane reported, his voice low but steady. "All decks accounted for. Minimal power loss." I nodded and stepped toward the main viewport. The system before us didn't have a name, just coordinates. But what I saw when the distortion cleared made my blood freeze. It was a planet, or what was left of one. It drifted in the void like a corpse in dark water, split in 3 jagged sections, crust torn open, core still faintly glowing under layers of exposed mineral. But it wasn't just destruction that made it disturbing. It was the fact that each fragment was perfectly smooth. No irregular breaks, no impact craters, just clean, unnatural precision, like a butcher slicing through bone. And orbiting the pieces? Satellites, dozens of them. Dead, still, old. "Are those human-made?" I asked, narrowing my eyes. "No," Jane said. "Older." He pulled up the scan overlay. "Metals pre-fusion age, no current in the cores, 0 activity. These satellites have been dead for centuries." "Whose are they?" He shook his head. "No record. Nothing in the archives." I stared at the fragments of the planet again. Something about the layout made me uneasy. "Rotate the view," I said. He did. And when the display turned 87 degrees, I saw it. The fragments didn't drift randomly. They were arranged, kept in a fixed triangle formation by something invisible. Magnetic tethers, maybe. Gravitational anchors. Some kind of ancient tech. But it wasn't natural. This was intentional. Someone wanted this dead world to be seen. We brought the ship into slow orbit around the largest planetary shard. From this close, the details were worse. Towers, structures. Ruins half buried in exposed core rock. Cities torn in half, frozen in collapse. Buildings still standing in vacuum with their upper halves gone, like the top floors had been carved off. And most disturbing of all? No bodies, no bones, no debris, no signs of life, just architecture, preserved, sterile, like a museum of extinction. We launched 2 drones. One crashed 15 seconds in, magnetics overloaded. The second made it to the surface, fed us 3 minutes of static-filled footage, then shut off mid-broadcast. But not before it showed us something. A symbol. Not carved, not printed. Branded into the planet's crust. A circular glyph, identical to the one we saw pulsing in Object 01. And just below it, a corridor, clean, open, waiting. "We're going down," I said. Jane hesitated. "Same 3-man team?" "No," I said. "Just us." "You and me?" "We brought too many people last time. I think that's what triggered the pulse. This time, we move quiet." We prepped for descent in silence. No words, no expectations. I didn't ask him if he was scared, and he didn't ask me if I was sure. Somewhere between the Threxian ambush and Earth Command's cowardice, we stopped needing to talk about things like that. We just moved. The drop took 9 minutes. We landed in what used to be a courtyard, cracked stone underfoot, silent towers overhead, casting long shadows over nothing. No light, no wind, just the sound of our own oxygen cycling through the suits. The corridor wasn't far. And as we approached it, something strange happened. My HUD began to flicker. Jane's too. Then the power levels in our weapons glitched. My sidearm dipped to 30%, then 6%, then full again. "This place is messing with tech," Joan muttered. "Or it's reading it," I said. We stepped inside. It didn't feel like a ruin. It felt like something still alive. The walls weren't stone. They were composite alloy, textured like bone, but too warm to be metal. Lights pulsed along the ceiling, dim, rhythmic, like a low heartbeat you couldn't quite hear, but felt under your skin. The corridor sloped downward, and we followed. Deeper. Each step felt like walking into the throat of some sleeping beast. After 15 minutes, we entered a chamber, a dome, high ceiling, no furniture, just one thing in the center, a chair. No, not a chair. A throne, made of the same black alloy as Object 01, slick, featureless, carved from a single piece, and above it, floating silently, a sphere, the same kind we'd seen in the beacon system. This one wasn't pulsing, it was off, dormant, until we stepped closer. Then it came alive. Not with lights, with memory. I wasn't standing in the chamber anymore. I was watching, through someone else's eyes, the planet intact, glorious, lush, its people, tall, luminous, silent, walked its cities in peace. Their tech wasn't just mechanical, it was harmonic, responsive. Everything built around resonance, sound, thought, emotion. They weren't warriors, they were architects. And then the sky broke. I saw the fleet arrive. Not Threxian, not human, something else. Angular ships, dark matter shells, no sound, no warning. They came with purpose, not to conquer, but to silence. I watched the people run. I watched their towers fall. I felt their last moments, confusion, sorrow, and a wordless plea that echoed across the stars. Not again. Then I was back, on my knees, helmet fogged, heart racing. Jane was staring at the sphere, frozen, mouth open, eyes wide. "You saw it too?" I asked, breath ragged. He nodded slowly. "Who the hell were they?" I looked back at the throne, at the emptiness of it. They weren't soldiers. He swallowed hard. Then why the throne? I stood, because I finally understood. They were waiting for someone else to take it. The worst kind of truth is the one that waits in silence, not hidden, not protected, not locked behind some ancient code, just sitting there in plain view, waiting for someone dumb or desperate enough to look it in the eye. That's what the throne was. It wasn't an artifact, it wasn't a monument, it was a question. And the moment I stood in front of it, I knew this wasn't the first time it had been offered. Jane sat on the steps below it, still shaking from whatever vision hit him. I didn't need to ask what he saw. We'd both been inside the same moment, wearing someone else's skin, watching the fall of a civilization that clearly didn't go down screaming. They went down remembering. They made this place a memory engine, a vault, not to preserve themselves, but to warn whoever came next. And judging by the fact that the planet was still untouched, no looting, no scavenging, no signs of return, I had a feeling no one ever did. Until us. I stepped closer to the throne. No reaction, no lights, no pulse, just the smooth black curve of alien material cold under the gloves of my suit. I stared at the engravings, not words, not symbols, impressions. Like something had sat here once. Something tall, something humanoid, something that no longer existed. "Commander," Jane said behind me, voice tight, "you don't actually think this is for us?" "I don't know what it is," I muttered, "but it's waiting for someone to sit in it. That tells me one thing." "What?" "This was never about extinction." He frowned. "You saw what happened to this place." "Exactly." I turned to face him. "They didn't kill everything. They left the message, the beacon, this throne. You're saying they didn't just destroy, they chose." "Yes." "Chose what?" I looked back at the throne. "Who gets to inherit the galaxy?" We left the chamber slowly. Neither of us said anything as we ascended the corridor. The walls seemed darker now, as if the place had exhaled after holding its breath for centuries. Outside, the ruined city felt different too. Not dead, but quietly awake, as if it was watching us. We returned to the Harbinger by skiff. The docking bay felt too small, too bright, too human. As I stepped off the platform, I looked around at my crew. Some familiar faces, some replacements. And I saw it, in their eyes, the weight. Even though they hadn't seen what we saw, they felt it now. The deeper into this trail we went, the more we were shedding pieces of ourselves, replacing instinct with doubt, replacing faith with questions no one was prepared to answer. Back on the bridge, I collapsed into the command chair and stared at the main display. Still no movement from the observation units, still 4 of them, still silent, still watching. But now I understood something different. They weren't watching us because they were afraid. They were watching because we were the last entry in their ledger. They'd seen everything, every empire, every species, every failure, and now they were watching us to see if we'd do it differently. Join stood next to me, silent, arms crossed. Then he said quietly, "You're thinking about taking the throne, aren't you?" I didn't answer. Because I was. But we didn't have time to consider the philosophical weight of that decision. We weren't alone anymore. An alert blinked red on the console. Incoming jump signature. Single vessel. No IFF. Jane's eyes widened. Fleet Command? I shook my head. Doesn't match Earth drive signature. We watched the distortion open on the edge of the system, fold space peeling back like a wound in the void, and from it emerged a ship. Sleek, compact, matte black, human design, but not one of ours. What the hell is that? Jane muttered. The ship didn't transmit, didn't identify. But I knew what it was. Arcos, Vice Admiral Corvin's Black Project Division. The kind of outfit that didn't exist on paper but had clearance to go wherever it damn well pleased, and clearly they'd been watching me. Bring up long-range visuals, I ordered. The ship rotated slowly, positioning itself between us and the dead planet. Weapons powered, shields activated, and finally it hailed. Commander Renner, came the voice. Filtered, synthetic, male. This is Arcos Unit Theta. You are ordered to power down your vessel and prepare for asset retrieval. I leaned forward. On what grounds? Article 0. Jane blinked. That's not in the Fleet Codex. I nodded slowly. Exactly. I opened the comm. Arcos Theta, this is Commander Renner of the Harbinger. The site below contains information critical to the survival of our species. If you're here to destroy it, you're not protecting Earth, you're blinding it. The voice came back colder. You've gone too far, Commander. You've seen too much. This knowledge is not for integration. It's for containment. I stood up. Then you already made the wrong call. I closed the channel. Charge weapons, I said to the bridge crew. Jane stepped in front of me. Are you serious? I looked him in the eye. I didn't come this far to hand the future over to a secret committee who's scared of it. We locked onto the Arcos ship. They responded in kind. Standoff. 2 human ships. Same tech, same blood, aimed at each other over a world no one remembered. Then something changed. The observation units moved. Not fast, just slightly. A twitch of position. A flicker of energy. But it was enough. The Arcos ship powered down. Immediately, their engines dropped. Shields collapsed. Their comms went dead. Jane's voice was barely a whisper. They just shut them down. The Watchers weren't protecting us. They were observing the test. And we had just passed one. Because we chose to defy silence. I ordered our systems offline and kept comms clear. For the next hour, no one said anything. Not on the bridge, not in engineering, not on the decks. It was like the ship held its breath. Then, one of the observation units broke formation and began to descend, toward the throne. I watched as it hovered just above the city ruins, then dropped a pod, smooth, black, egg-shaped. It hit the surface and unfolded. A beacon rose from within, and it began to transmit. One phrase. Over and over. Lineage accepted. Trial phase initiated. I stared at the screen and realized the truth. The throne wasn't a position. It was a burden. The civilizations that came before us had been given the same offer, and they all failed the trial, collapsed, turned violent, destroyed themselves. But humanity, we'd just made the first right move. Not submission, not conquest. Choice. Jane looked at me. So what now? I stared at the beacon, at the signal pulsing out into the void, not just a warning, but a summon. Now, I said, now we find out what the hell the trial really is. It began with a tremor, not on the planet, not in the ship, in the signal. The beacon left by the observer unit, the black pod buried halfway in dust, started to stutter. 1 minute, it pulsed steadily. Calm, measured. Then came the static, the warble. The drop in rhythm like a heart skipping beats. And then it changed. Not just a flicker of data, a full-blown summon. "Commander," Jane said from the comms station, "something's piggybacking on the trial signal." "Source?" He ran the scan. Froze. "Not local, not even system-bound." "Then what?" "Multiple signal responses, at least 3, from different systems." My stomach tightened. "Species?" "Unidentified." The trial wasn't a ceremony. It was a challenge, and we had just rung the bell. The next 24 hours moved like drowning in wet concrete. 3 new signals, 3 returning echoes, all with the same encryption patterns, all feeding into the observer network, each from a different corner of the outer spiral, each accompanied by jump signatures. We weren't just being watched now, we were being summoned to compete. And the others were already on their way. I called a secure meeting in the tactical deck. Crew captains, weapons officers, engineering chiefs, no command masks, no fleet liaisons, just the core personnel still loyal to one thing: survival without submission. Jane stood to my right as I faced the room. "They've started the trial," I said. "We're the first, but not the only ones." The room was silent. A weapons officer spoke first. "And we're supposed to, what, compete? Win? Against who?" "Don't know yet." "But they're coming?" "They are." "What happens if we lose?" I looked at him. I didn't blink. We become a cautionary memory, like the ones buried under us. The first contact arrived 41 hours later. Not with an attack. Not with a warning. Just a ship, massive, plated in scorched armor and patchwork tech. It didn't decelerate. Didn't transmit. It just drifted into orbit, slow, deliberate, leaking radiation like a dying star. Its shape wasn't aerodynamic. It didn't need to be. It looked like someone had taken a space station, ripped it out of a black hole, and strapped engines to it with metal cables. "Reading life signs," Jane said, "but it's wrong." "How?" He showed me the bioscan. Single humanoid structure, 11 meters tall, pulsing organ clusters spread across its body like internal tumors. A crew of 1. They finally hailed. The screen flickered. And then he appeared. Not a face, a silhouette. Broad shoulders, helmeted head, breathing like gravel poured through iron pipes. And then a voice like cracking bone. "We remember the throne. We bled for it. We were denied. Now we return." Jane whispered beside me. "What species is that?" I didn't take my eyes off the screen. "That's not a species," I said. "That's a survivor." The creature, who called himself Corvael, claimed he was once part of a race called the Velari, an empire that reached beyond 6 arms of the galaxy. They had been part of the last trial 15,000 years ago. They lost. But he didn't die. He escaped, alone, the only one left from a civilization that had once tried to claim the throne by force. Now he'd come back, modified, enhanced, stripped of everything except willpower and hate. He didn't want the throne. He wanted revenge on anyone who got near it. Jane said quietly, "He's not here to compete." "No," I said. "He's here to make sure no one wins." 2 hours after Corville arrived, the second signal dropped out of fold space. This one was worse. Not because it was massive, but because it was beautiful. The ship was like a sculpture, gold, white, glowing softly, shaped like a feather caught in orbit. And when it opened comms, the bridge filled with light, soft music, and a face, too perfect, too calm, too still. A woman, ageless, smooth skin, eyes like polished silver. She didn't speak with a mouth. Her voice came through every system at once. "The Ascended do not seek conquest. We seek order. The galaxy has proven chaotic in lesser hands. We offer harmony through design." She called her people the Seraphim Construct, synthetic organic hybrids born from the remnants of 13 failed bio-civilizations. Not evolved, not built, curated. By whom? She didn't say, but I could guess. She claimed they were chosen by the observers to bring balance, not by violence, but by assimilation. They didn't conquer. They didn't destroy. They converted. Jane looked at me as her signal faded. "Did you catch the subtext in that?" "All of it," I said. "They're going to try to absorb us." He exhaled slowly. "So one's a killer, and the other's a virus." I nodded. "And the third?" "Still inbound." We didn't have to wait long. The third signal arrived just after midnight ship time. The jump signature was dirty, disrupted, like it was crashing through fold space instead of entering it. The ship that emerged was mangled, shaped like a claw, flickering with electrical surges and hull fractures. But it was alive. Barely. And it broadcast only one phrase: "We seek redemption." The crew it carried, a multi-species group of scavengers and war refugees, called themselves the Broken Fold. They didn't represent an empire. They didn't have unity. They weren't a race. They were survivors from 100 dead civilizations, all of which had once tried, and failed, to survive past observer trials. Now, they flew together as a last hope. They didn't want the throne. They wanted it destroyed, to end the cycle, to collapse the game, to wipe out the Watchers. I locked the bridge down after the third arrival, called only my closest officers, and I laid it out for them. Corville, a relic of wrath here to kill. The Seraphim Construct, a machine cult offering peace at the price of individuality. The Broken Fold, a wounded collective with nothing to lose, except the chance to burn it all down. And us? We were the new blood, the wild card. Humanity, fractured, reckless, emotional, but still standing. Still unclaimed by any past trial, still unjudged. "This is the test," I said. "Not a battle, not a war, a pressure chamber." Jane leaned forward. "And the throne is the bait." I nodded. "They want to see who reaches for it, and how." One of the officers, Captain Run, folded his arms. "And if none of us do?" "Then maybe they wait another 10,000 years. Another voice cut in. "Or maybe they burn us all and reset the board." No one argued, because we all knew it was possible. I stared at the projected image of the throne chamber on the screen. Still intact. Still empty. And then I made a decision. "We're going back down." Jane stared at me. "To do what?" I met his eyes. "To talk to the observers." The last time I stepped onto the throne world, the air felt dead. Now it felt like it was holding its breath. Not metaphorically. Literally. The atmospheric pressure around the landing site had changed, denser, heavier, like gravity itself was unsure what was coming. The sky above was a bruise-purple blend of fading starlight and radiation dust. Even the ground under our boots hummed faintly. The planet knew. They all did. The contenders had arrived. 3 ships hovered in orbit at precise intervals around the planetary fragments. The Harbinger held one station, while the other 2 were kept at a tight equidistance, as if dictated by some unseen protocol. None of us had claimed territory. None of us had fired. Yet. But the tension? It was unbearable. I took Jane and 2 guards with me. Minimal presence, maximum mobility. Our shuttle cut through the thickened sky and descended toward the same landing zone we'd used before, a half-buried courtyard of crumbling ruins and obsidian glass. Except this time, we weren't alone. The first figure we saw stood motionless near the edge of the throne corridor, 11 feet tall, clad in armor that looked welded to his flesh. Viel. "Commander Renner," Jane whispered behind me. "I see him." "Do we engage?" "No, let's see if he speaks before he kills." We stepped forward slowly. The guards kept their rifles low but ready. Viel didn't move. He didn't need to. He radiated presence like a dying sun. His frame was scarred, metal fused with bone, skin replaced with plated alloy, his face a helmet of jagged angles with a vertical slit that glowed red from within. When he finally spoke, it wasn't with sound. It was like the air itself vibrated. "You return to the place of judgment, still believing you are the first." I stopped 10 paces away. "I believe we're the only ones that haven't already failed." Silence. Then a faint hiss. A breath? A laugh? "Your ignorance is not courage, but it is refreshing." He stepped aside, didn't block us, didn't threaten, just let us pass. Jane leaned close. "That's not what I expected." I kept my eyes forward. "He's not here to play predator anymore. He's here to watch." "Watch what?" The others fail. We entered the corridor, the same strange warmth in the walls, the same pulsing light like a heartbeat buried in stone. But this time it was faster, louder. The world was awake now, reacting to us, testing. We reached the throne chamber and found them already there. 2 figures. One stood perfectly still in the center of the room, tall, feminine, glowing faintly with inner light. White robes, silver eyes, seraphim construct. The other crouched near the far wall, half shrouded in shadow, a woman in patchwork armor, face tattooed, skin scarred, one arm clearly synthetic and twitching. Broken fold. They turned as we entered. The seraphim didn't speak. She projected. "So the unbound children arrive. Curious." I stepped into the room, the guards fanning out slowly. "We didn't come to kneel. We came to talk." The seraphim tilted her head. "Talk is a primitive function. We calculate probability. We model worth." "That's the problem. You're not listening, just measuring." She smiled without moving her mouth. "Listening is inefficient." The woman from the broken fold stood up now. Her voice was sharp, low, and human. "Mostly. Don't mind the light show. They'll wrap your brain in philosophy until you're begging for silence." She stepped closer. "My name's Rika, formerly of the Delari Ascendancy, before they got wiped off the map in the last trial." Jane's eyes narrowed. "You survived?" Rika smirked. "I adapted." She nodded at the throne. "Everyone in this room thinks they have a right to that thing, but none of them deserve it." "And you do?" She shrugged. "No, but I'm the only one who wants to burn it." I walked forward slowly, letting the others talk, watching their positions, their spacing, their intent. And I understood something most would miss. This wasn't diplomacy. This was probing. Each of them was waiting to see who'd move first, not to fight, but to claim. Because whoever reached for that throne wouldn't just make a statement. They'd trigger the next phase of the trial, and none of us were ready for that. The observer sphere hovered above the throne again, still dark, but different now. Its casing cracked faintly with light beneath the surface, like something inside was stirring, awakening, responding to us. Then the seraphim spoke again, and this time everyone listened. One must claim the burden, or all shall be deemed unworthy. The words weren't a threat. They were protocol. We stood in silence. Even Corvael now stood at the chamber entrance, unmoving, waiting. Jane looked at me. You thinking what I'm thinking? Probably not. You want to take the throne? No. Then what? I want to see what happens when someone tries. I turned to Rika. You want to end this? She nodded. I pointed at the throne. Then sit in it. She blinked. What? You said you didn't want power, just to stop the cycle. So take the seat. Break it. Show them it can't be claimed. Jane looked confused. Renner, I raised a hand. I wasn't gambling. I was baiting, and it worked. Rika stepped forward, slow. Everyone watched. No one moved. She reached the steps, climbed them, paused, then lowered herself onto the throne, and the room changed. Light exploded from the sphere above. Not a pulse, a surge. The chamber went white. Air rushed in from nowhere. Pressure warped. Stone cracked. The walls folded outward, revealing impossible depths, halls that extended into void space, corridors of light and shadow that obeyed no geometry. Rika screamed. Her back arched. The throne lit up with circuitry that hadn't been visible, glowing red through the cracks. Not absorbing her. Reading her. The seraphim raised a hand, but didn't interfere. Corvael stepped into the room but stopped short. And I stood perfectly still, watching the trial interface initiate. The throne wasn't the prize. It was the judge, and it didn't ask for volunteers. It chose. Rika collapsed forward, breathing hard, eyes wide. The light dimmed. The sphere hovered lower, its outer casing open now, revealing an inner core of crystalline data. It pulsed. Candidate rejected. The room shook. Stone fell from the ceiling. A second voice followed. Burden must be chosen by consensus or dominance. Input required. I turned to Jane. Dominance it is. He nodded grimly, and then everything happened at once. Corvael charged. No warning, no speech. He moved like gravity bent for him, the floor cracking under his weight, his arms outstretched like blades. He wasn't trying to sit on the throne. He was trying to shatter it. Jane pulled Rika out of the way. The seraphim stepped back, folding into a lattice of light that wrapped around her like armor. I drew my weapon. Not to kill, but to stall. Cor! I shouted. This isn't a test of might. Boom! His foot hit the step. The entire structure cracked, but it didn't break. Instead, the light from the sphere turned black. It pulsed once, and threw him back with a shockwave that shook the mountain. He crashed into the wall, didn't rise, didn't move. And the voice returned, now clearer than ever. None may take what they do not understand. I looked around, at the broken, the ascended, the last survivor, and I stepped up to the throne, one foot on the step, then another. The others watched, but didn't move. And I said one word, show me. The throne didn't glow, the sphere didn't surge. Instead, a final voice, one we hadn't heard, filled the chamber, calm, male, old, human. Your kind is not ready, I stared up. Then why give us the map? Because readiness does not mean worth. Silence, then. You chose observation, not domination. You chose alliance, not absorption. You chose caution, not silence. You are not the strongest or the most advanced, but you are the first to pass the first test. The sphere pulsed once more. The true trial begins now. The floor fell away. The chamber vanished. And we were somewhere else entirely. There was no sensation when the floor vanished. No falling, no weightlessness, just absence. Like reality had blinked. And when it opened its eyes again, we weren't in the throne chamber anymore. We were somewhere else. The first thing I noticed was the light. It had no source, no origin point, no shadows. It just existed, ambient, sterile, soft enough to see but too flat to feel natural. It reflected off nothing. It revealed everything and hid everything all at once. The second thing I noticed was the silence. Not the kind that comes from distance or emptiness. This was the silence of something listening, watching, waiting. We stood on a platform made of white stone, floating in a void of swirling gray. No stars, no planets, no up or down, just us. Jane stood to my left, swaying slightly. Rika was behind me, still recovering from the throne's rejection. Her face was pale, and her left arm, the synthetic one, twitched like it had caught a virus. The seraphim construct hovered several feet away, still glowing, still too calm. Corvale wasn't here. That fact alone unsettled me more than everything else. If he'd been removed from the trial entirely, that meant they had judged him already. And it wasn't worth continuing. A voice came. Not through the air, through us. Phase 2. Identity alignment. I clenched my fists. What the hell does that mean? The platform shifted, not physically, but perceptually. One moment we stood on blank stone. The next, we were standing on Earth, or something like it. I stared around in disbelief. Blue skies, ruined cities, craters where skyscrapers once stood, collapsed bridges, empty rivers, fires in the distance. It wasn't Earth as it was. It was Earth after the fall. Jane muttered beside me. This isn't real. No, I said. It's a projection. Rika looked around and scoffed. So this is what they think our legacy looks like? I wasn't so sure. I stepped forward, slowly, across the cracked pavement of what used to be a city street. Dust swirled in the wind. An old flyer, maybe a warning from wartime, skittered past my boots. Mandatory relocation zone. 7. Await processing. Commander, Jane said behind me, this isn't just a test. No, I agreed. It's a mirror. The trial wasn't about fighting. Not yet. It was about showing us the ending we were headed toward. Unless we proved we could change it. The voice returned. Each contender will now present their model for survival. The platform flashed, and the seraphim construct stepped forward. Light shimmered around her as the projection shifted again. Cities rebuilt, perfect symmetry, structures gleaming in silver and white. People, or things that resembled people, walked silently through clean streets, faces blank, movements synchronized. No crime, no war, no difference. We offer unity through design, she said. No starvation, no violence, all minds calibrated to optimal function. It was beautiful, perfect, soulless. The platform dimmed again, then shifted. Now we saw ruins, not ours, but someone else's. Torn alien cities, monuments melted by energy weapons, corpses stacked in bunkers, a scorched galaxy, Corvael's memory. Survival is conquest, his voice echoed faintly. Victory is the only morality that endures. The image flickered out. No continuation, no rebuild, just destruction as legacy. Even the observers didn't seem interested in his outcome. Next was Raka. She didn't speak. She just watched as the platform shifted again, this time to a black field of stars, each blinking in and out, a galaxy resetting itself. All civilizations erased. Clean slate, nothing to inherit, nothing to rule, just silence. Her model wasn't peace, it was mercy, a galaxy with no throne at all. Finally, it was our turn. The platform dimmed. And for a long moment, nothing happened. Then, chaos. Protests in the streets, corrupt leaders behind podiums, fleet admirals taking bribes, civil wars, wasted planets, overpopulation, addiction, slums beside towers of luxury. Jane cursed under his breath. They're showing our worst. No, I said. They're showing the truth. But then, it changed. A colony ship lifting off from a broken Earth. A mixed crew, different faces, different blood. A battalion standing between civilians and an invading force. A father building a shelter on a red planet with scavenged metal. A child learning to speak while orbiting Saturn. Not perfection, not control, but resilience. The voice returned. Candidate humanity, analysis incomplete. Inconsistencies detected, contradictions unresolved. Potential acknowledged. I exhaled slowly. We weren't chosen, but we weren't dismissed. The projection faded, and we were back on the platform of light, still hovering in gray. No throne now, no walls, just us. And the voice again. You will now answer the question. Jane looked confused. What question? Why do you deserve the future? The seraphim answered first. Because only order can prevent extinction. Rika followed. Because no one deserves to inherit a broken system. I looked up into the gray and said, because we haven't decided yet. Silence, a long one. Then, elaborate. I stepped forward. My species doesn't know what it wants. Some of us crave control, others crave freedom. Some fight, others build. We're fractured, flawed, dangerous. I looked around at the others. But we're aware of it. I nodded toward the images they showed us. We've survived by contradiction. We have empathy and brutality in the same heartbeat. We destroy and create. We betray and protect. And the reason we deserve the future, I paused, is because we never stop choosing. Jane stepped up beside me. We're not unified. We're not calibrated. But we evolve. And every mistake we make, we carry forward. He looked into the void. And if you're judging us by what we are now, you'll never understand what we're becoming. The silence was deeper now, and I swear I could feel something shift inside the gray, something massive, ancient, maybe even afraid. The voice returned, softer. Humanity's flaw is its strength. Humanity's danger is its potential. Humanity's future is uncertain. A final pulse of light, then accepted. The platform shattered, and the world blinked again. We awoke on the throne world, back in the chamber, lying on cold stone, breathing hard. Jane sat up first, gasping. Rika was groaning, holding her head. The seraphim construct was gone. No trace, no echo, no light. Corvael's body remained, still motionless near the wall, silent and defeated. But in the center of the room, a new structure, a beacon, human-made. Jane crawled toward it. What is this? I stepped beside him and wiped the dust from its faceplate. There was a message etched into the steel. 4 words. Trial Phase 2 complete. And beneath it, coordinates, new ones, nowhere near Earth. I stood slowly and felt the weight of everything settle on my shoulders. We weren't fighting for a seat anymore. We were building the next test, not just for us, but for whatever comes next. Get us off this planet, I said. Jane nodded. Where to? I looked at the coordinates again. They didn't point to a throne or a battlefield. They pointed to a forge. There was no applause, no grand announcement, just coordinates, burned into a steel pillar, left in the heart of a dead world that once judged us and nearly broke us. Joan stared at the numbers. You recognize the region? I nodded slowly. It's near the Persid Expanse. Dead zone. No charts, no routes. No reason to go. Until now. Yeah. I ran my hand across the beacon's edge. The alloy wasn't Earth-made, not fully. It had our structure, our coding patterns, but the surface shimmered with something else. Watcher tech. Modified. Adapted. It was a message, one they didn't say out loud. You passed, now prove it. Back aboard the Harbinger, the mood was quiet. The kind of quiet that sits deep in the bones. Not fear, not grief. Just a shared understanding that we were no longer just soldiers. No longer survivors. We were now responsible for what came next. I stood in the command bay, looking down at the beacon data as it loaded into our star charts. It formed a network of locations, with one central hub, a pulsar-adjacent system so volatile no fleet mission had ever charted it. At its center? A structure, massive, dormant, waiting. The observers hadn't just selected it, they'd built it, long ago, for this moment. Jane stepped beside me. Looks like a ring habitat. I nodded. A big one. How big? I tapped the data overlay. If these specs are right, it's the size of Earth's moon, hollow, incomplete. His eyes widened. They want us to finish it. No, I said. They want us to shape it. It wasn't just a forge. It was the canvas of the future, not for weapons, not for war, but for human design. What we built there, how we built it, who we let shape it, what values we embedded into its bones, would decide our path forward. It would be our answer, the final proof. 4 days later, we reached the outer rim of the designated system. Fold space kicked us out with enough force to shake the hull plating. We dropped into a debris field littered with ancient wreckage, bones of ships that tried to pass too close to the pulsar and got fried by radiation waves. Through the wreckage, we saw it. The ring. Massive, incomplete. Its structure stretched across a third of the system, metallic arcs hanging like ribs around the star. Giant stabilizer pylons floated in fixed orbits. Beams half-welded extended into nothing, unfinished habitats open to the void. And in its center, a single control tower, silent and dark. It had no name, no designation. So we gave it one. Project Dawnforge. We docked at the central tower 3 hours after arrival. No resistance, no security, no voice from the void this time. Just open airlocks, as if the observers had finished their part. And now it was our turn. I assembled a core team, engineers, architects, a few sociologists, and Jane. We stepped into the heart of the control tower. What we found wasn't a bridge, it was a Genesis chamber. Walls lined with projection systems, DNA archives, tech blueprints, linguistic libraries, cultural data from thousands of civilizations, most extinct, all recorded, preserved. It was a library of what came before, and we were supposed to build what came after. A message played the moment we activated the central node. Not a voice, a phrase in every language known to humanity. Build what reflects your soul. It will echo forever. The gravity of it hit hard, because what we built here wasn't just a structure, it would be our legacy. And our warning. We started slow, laid down a base frame, a rotating ring segment capable of housing 30,000 people, powered by the pulsar's radiation. Jane handled structural integrity and layout. I handled logistics, defense grid integration, comms relays. Then came the hard part. Who do we bring? Who represents humanity? Who decides what our future looks like? It wasn't just a military question anymore. It was civilization design. And I wasn't a politician. Word leaked fast. Even though we hadn't sent any open comms, someone on Earth Command knew where we were. Probably Arcos, maybe Corvin. Hell, maybe they always knew. Within 2 days, 3 more ships arrived. Earth delegates, scientists, engineers. And behind them, politicians. They came in dressed clean, voices polished, intentions hidden behind smiles. They didn't thank us. They didn't ask permission. They just walked aboard like they'd been expected. And in a way, they had. Because this part, the corruption, the power-grabbing, the greed, it was as much a part of humanity as the hope we'd clung to back in the chamber. Jane cornered me that night in the observation deck. They're going to hijack this. I know. They're already rewriting the colony charter, putting their names on the Foundation plaques. They're pushing the civilian quarter design to favor their parties. I know. So what do we do? I looked out at the ring, at the glowing pylons, the beams stretching out like broken hands toward the void. We build anyway. He stared at me. You're going to let them infect this? No, I said. I'm going to let them prove they can't finish it without breaking it. 2 weeks passed. Construction accelerated. The Seraphim construct never returned. Neither did Corvael or Rika. No other contenders answered the coordinates. This phase belonged to us. The forge began to take shape. 5 ring sections fully pressurized, habitat units installed, artificial gravity operational, and still no word from the observers, no judgment, no threats, just us. Working, compromising, fighting, arguing, but still building. Then, one morning I woke to a red alert. Not from outside, from inside. The forge's 4th ring segment had lost atmosphere. Sabotage. A section of life support infrastructure was overloaded, melted from within. 10 crew died. 2 civilian engineers. 1 of my own officers. Jane stood over the wreckage as the fire suppression system cycled. His face was dark. They did this, he muttered. The delegates. They're fighting for control from within. I nodded. They want it to fail. No, I said. They want us to fail, so they can take over. I convened the senior team in the command ring. Every department head, civilian, military, science, diplomatic. And I said one thing. You've been given something no species has ever been offered. They stared at me, confused, tense. You weren't asked to conquer or surrender or follow some prophecy. I walked the room slowly. You were asked to build, to create something worthy of echoing into the future. I pointed out the window at the stars. Right now we have silence from the ones who tested us, because they're watching what we do with this moment. I turned back to them. And if we poison it with politics, with pettiness, with greed, they'll erase us like the rest. Quiet, swift, final. I paused. And maybe we'll deserve it. No one spoke, not at first, but some nodded. Joan stood beside me, and for the first time in weeks I saw belief on people's faces again. Not because we'd solved the problem, but because we'd named it. In the following days, construction shifted. We stopped following the committee drafts. We started building around function, not vanity. No statues, no command centers with penthouse views. We installed agriculture pods, multicultural libraries, joint command hubs with rotating leadership. Not because it was perfect, but because it was the only way forward that didn't mirror the worst of us. And then, one night, the observers spoke again. Not with words, with arrival. A new sphere appeared in orbit, larger than before, engraved with symbols, ours, not theirs. It didn't scan, didn't emit light. It just hovered there, watching. and on every terminal across the forge. A single message appeared. The foundation is laid. The final test awaits. And beneath it, another set of coordinates. I stood in the command tower, Jane beside me. We didn't celebrate. We didn't smile. We just stared at the screen. Quiet. Because we knew what this meant. We had one trial left. And if we failed that one, everything we built would become another ruin in the void, just like all the others. The coordinates pointed to a system that didn't exist on any map. No star charts, no logs, not even anomalies. But it was there, hidden behind a fold layer that only activated when the observer sphere broadcast a secondary frequency. When we keyed into that signal, space itself bent, and the system unfolded like a secret compartment carved into the galaxy. We dropped out of fold space into stillness. No planets, no moons. Just a single object suspended in nothing, a black orb the size of a small planet. Not spinning, not orbiting, just waiting. We approached cautiously. Jane stood beside me on the bridge, his jaw tight. "That thing's not made of any material I've ever seen," he said. "It's not made to be seen," I replied. We ran scans, infrared, quantum resonance, LiDAR sweeps, nothing came back. Not invisible, non-reflective. It absorbed everything. Light, radiation, signals, as if the universe itself wasn't allowed to know what was inside. A docking port opened as we neared, without any prompt. Just a slow, circular iris forming on the surface, like an eye waking up. We didn't debate. We docked. We suited up. And we entered. What lay inside was not a station, not a facility. It was a grave. The interior of the orb was vast, an impossible space, far larger than the exterior suggested. A spatial distortion field, or maybe something older than that. We walked into what felt like a city inside a void. Towering monoliths stood in the dark, each one carved from materials we couldn't identify. Black stone, amber crystal, petrified bone. They weren't just structures, they were markers. Every monolith represented a lost civilization, tens of thousands of them. Some names were recorded in symbols that moved when you stared at them too long. Others were just images, species, ships, planets. Jane whispered, "They've been doing this for millions of years." I nodded. "Longer." A soft light pulsed ahead of us. A pathway. We followed. The deeper we went, the colder it got. Not in temperature, in presence. It felt like something behind every monolith was watching. Not alive, not angry, just disappointed. We walked in silence until the corridor opened into a final chamber. Circular, empty, except for one thing in the center. A chair. Not like the throne. No grandeur, no metal, just a plain wooden chair with a figure seated calmly in it. Old, human. He looked like a man in his late 60s, wearing a flight uniform, early Earth era, cracked leather, faded insignia. He was bald, lean, with eyes so pale they were nearly white. He didn't look up at first, just waited. Then, when we were close enough, he spoke. "It took you long enough." I froze. Jane stepped forward, cautious. "Who are you?" The old man smiled faintly. "I was like you once, loud, hopeful, armed." He looked at me. I even wore that same expression. What expression? That mix of disbelief and defiance. He stood slowly. "Don't bother asking if I'm real. I'm not. I'm a composite, a voice the observers shaped using your species' own echo. I'm what you needed to hear." "And what is this place?" I asked. His smile faded. "A record?" He gestured to the monoliths behind us. "Of everyone who failed." He walked slowly around the chamber, hands behind his back. "They came here with purpose, ambition, vision, just like you. They passed the first tests, they built, they adapted, but they made the same mistake. What mistake? He turned. They believed the trial was about them. The room grew quieter. He tapped his chest. You think the throne is for you, that you are meant to decide the shape of the galaxy. He pointed outward, beyond the walls. But this is not about what you want. It's about what you leave behind. Jane furrowed his brow. Isn't that what we've been doing? We built the forge. We didn't conquer. We didn't submit. You built, the voice said, but you haven't chosen what kind of future it represents. He turned to me again. That's why you're here. Suddenly, the chamber changed. No movement, just an overlay, reality folding in on itself. And now we stood in front of 3 visions, like projections, but sharper. Tangible. Each floated like a ghost in the void. The first was a galaxy of order. Clean. Controlled. Silent. The Seraphim's legacy. No wars. No poverty. No emotion. Peace through obedience. The second was fire. Ships exploding. Planets bleeding. Flags raised over mass graves. The legacy of conquest. Corvael's answer. Peace through dominance. The third was silence. A void. No voices. No memory. No witnesses. Rika's solution. Peace through extinction. Then came the fourth. Ours. Half-formed. A planet growing unevenly. Civilizations clashing, cooperating, stalling, racing ahead. Flawed. Messy. Unfinished. Peace through struggle. The old man looked at me. That's the legacy you're building. Why show us this? Because you haven't finished it. He stepped closer. And now you must decide what happens if you're no longer there to guide it. What do you mean? I asked. He raised a hand. Final trial. His voice dropped lower. Leadership is not control. It's abandonment. The lights dimmed, and the message appeared on every visor, on every HUD. One must remain. The others must return. Jane stiffened. You want one of us to stay? Not want, the voice said. Require. Rika spoke from behind us, entering silently. Stay and do what? Observe, the man said. Guide. Sacrifice. Be the anchor. Jane turned to me. You think this is real? That they'll let someone go back? No, I said. They're testing if we'll walk away from the future to preserve it. Everyone was silent. No one moved. We all knew what this meant. Stay here, alone, forever. To carry the record, to become part of the trial system, to be the one who speaks to the next species. The man looked at me. You know it has to be you. I didn't argue. I just nodded. Jane grabbed my arm. Renner, I'm the only one who's seen every part of this. You're also the only one who can lead. No, I said. You are. He stared at me. Broken, but strong. I put a hand on his shoulder. You set it back on the forge. We're not perfect, but we carry our mistakes forward. Let this be mine. Rika nodded once. He's right. He brought us this far. The man smiled faintly. Then the trial is complete. They left. Jane paused at the threshold, eyes red. I didn't say goodbye, just nodded. Then they were gone, and I was alone. The chamber faded again. No more projections, no more voices, just the chair. I sat, and the archive welcomed me. For the first time in human history, we had passed. But the future? It was now theirs to build. I was just the last guardian of the question that would always echo into every species that followed. What will you become when no one is left to guide you but yourselves? 3 months had passed since we left him. Renner, seated in the quiet of that impossible chamber, eyes forward, spine straight. No ceremony, no last words, just a nod, the kind only soldiers understand. I used to think silence was a punishment. Now I understand it was a gift. because everything that came after was noise. We emerged back into normal space the way light returns to a room after a long power cut. Harsh, unnatural, too bright. The jump left us dizzy, our memories fragmented. But we knew the truth. We had passed, and Renner had stayed behind to become the voice of the next ones, whoever or whatever they might be. The observers didn't greet us. There was no message, no reward, just stars, empty and waiting. Project Dawnforge floated exactly where we left it, orbiting its pulsar like a wounded satellite trying to stay upright. From a distance, it looked complete, 6 ring segments fully built, habitat clusters lit, rotation stabilized, comm arrays blinking clean. But as we approached, we knew something was wrong. I stood at the viewport of the incoming shuttle, my fingers tightening on the armrest as the station grew larger in view. Rika stood beside me, leaning slightly against the bulkhead. Her synthetic arm had been repaired since the trials, though the twitch still showed up when she was tense. She noticed me watching. "Smells like rot, doesn't it?" "Not yet," I muttered, "but something's gone stale." They greeted us with smiles, perfect smiles, delegates, officers, engineers, even the same people we had left in command. But it wasn't the same station. The forge had changed. It was subtle, at first. The banners were different, no longer neutral gray and white. Now deep blue, trimmed with gold. Symbols of unity, they called them. Badges of legacy. I saw the faces of politicians on holoscreens, giving speeches about humanity's future, quoting lines from Renner's briefings, twisting them into slogans that didn't mean what they once did. Echo forward. Forge the order. One vision, one voice. And that's when I knew. They weren't building the future. They were weaponizing it. I held the debrief in a secure wing of the command core, the one section of the station they hadn't touched yet. My officers were waiting, loyalists all, engineers, scouts, veterans, people who still remembered what we actually fought for. I told them everything, about the archive, the failed species, the final trial, Renner's decision, and I watched their faces shift, grief, pride, confusion, and anger, because they saw what I did. We left a man behind to guard the next chapter of civilization, and these vultures had filled that chapter with lies. "The Unity Council?" I asked my old chief of security, Amaya. "What the hell is that?" She grimaced. "Formed 2 weeks after you disappeared, claimed emergency governance powers to finish the forge and protect Renner's vision. They even using his name? All over everything. Statues, documents, schools. Who's leading it?" "Director Theron Jass." I remembered him, a fleet liaison turned political parasite. Smooth voice, smiled too easily. The kind of man who'd sell the planet beneath him if he got to keep the flag. "How many follow him?" She hesitated. "Too many." I called a meeting, not a council, not a press broadcast, just the people who remembered the mission. It was time to take the forge back. They met me in a defunct section of Ring 5, once slated to be an education hub, now abandoned mid-build, filled with stripped panels and uninstalled conduits. We turned it into a war room. It felt appropriate, because this was a Cold War now, a war of truth versus version. Rika laid it out first. They're controlling infrastructure, life support, comms, food supply chains. They even rewrote the registry to make themselves founders. The rest of us? We're listed as advisors. Amaya added, "They're recruiting youth fast, indoctrination, loyalty programs, full surveillance." One of the engineers, Hale, looked sick. "They're already planning a fleet expansion. No vote, no review, just straight to construction." "They're building weapons?" I asked. "Frigates, Monitors, supposedly defensive, but they're using fusion-class cores, which meant those ships could nuke a city block from orbit, or level a moon. I stood in silence for a long time. Then I said, "We're done being advisors." We started small. Cutting off their back doors, isolating their power reroutes, taking control of forgotten subsystems, air filtration, internal sensors, gravity corridors. We didn't strike. We watched, listened, tracked, because we weren't just planning a mutiny, we were planning to reclaim a future. The moment came 2 weeks later. Theron Jass stood in the central forum, delivering a broadcast to every habitat ring. His voice filled the corridors. "This forge is a monument, a beacon, but it is also a fortress. The galaxy will watch us, and we will show them unity, one voice, one direction, one legacy." He raised his hand. A new flag unfurled, golden sun, blue field, a crowned forge at the center. I heard Rika snarl in my comm. He just crowned himself emperor. That night, we took the control tower. We didn't fire a shot. We locked down every system, froze every override, rerouted emergency access. When the morning came, Theron's council couldn't even open their own offices. I broadcast my own message. No filters, no slogans, just a camera, my voice, and Renner's original words. The trial was never about control. It was about what we leave behind. I looked straight into the feed. "My name is Commander Jane Merrick. I served under the man who gave his life for our right to shape the future, and I will not let his sacrifice be rewritten." I ended the broadcast with one sentence. The forge belongs to humanity, all of it or none of it. We expected resistance. We expected sabotage. We expected another civil war. But none came. Because most of the people on the station, they'd just been waiting for someone to say what they already knew, that Renner didn't die for flags. He died for the right to keep choosing. The Unity Council fell within 3 days. No bloodshed, no executions, just a purge of the systems, a shutdown of their propaganda, and a return to truth. Theron Jass? He tried to run. We caught him trying to launch a private skiff. I stood in the hangar bay as he was dragged back inside. He didn't beg. He didn't deny. He just said, "You'll never hold this place together." And I looked him dead in the eyes. "We don't have to. We just have to keep building it." Now the forge is ours again. Not perfect, not unified, but honest. It's scarred, like us. But we carry those scars forward, as warnings, not excuses. And at the heart of the command tower, there's a new monument. Not gold, not marble, just a seat. Simple. Steel. Empty. Beneath it is carved, "He stayed so we could build. Commander Renner." They didn't come with banners. They came with silence. No warning, no scan signatures, no pre-jump distortions, just presence. 3 ships, blacker than the void around them. No lights, no heat signatures. They appeared outside the forge like they'd always been there, watching from a distance only they could access. Jane saw them first. I was on the forge's outer ring platform, inspecting the new civilian habitat dome. A technician handed me a portable display with a pale face and shaking hands. "Sir, unknown contacts, non-human." I looked. Froze. My chest went tight. Not fear. Recognition. We weren't alone anymore. Jane's voice came through the comms a second later. "Tactical confirms no signal emissions. They're not probing us, not responding. Just watching." I tapped into the live feed. The ships were sleek, wide and low like dagger heads with wings. Their hulls shimmered subtly, as if coated in micro-thin plasma veils that bent surrounding space. Not Threxian, not Seraphim, not Fold, but familiar, ancient. I took the elevator up to Command Core. Everyone stood as I entered. Jane briefed me quickly. Long-range scans confirm no weapons deployed, but the Forge's sensors are getting interference. Our telemetry is being overwritten every 5 seconds. I've never seen this kind of data disruption before. They're not jamming us, I said. They're studying us. Jane grimaced. Like the observers did? No, I said. The observers watched from a distance. This is closer. I stared out at the black ships. These things want us to know we're being watched. We sent a standard hail. No reply. We escalated to a focused, tight beam comm. Still nothing. Then the third ship shifted position, just a few hundred meters closer. That was all it took. The Forge's outer shield array flickered, the lights dimmed for half a second, and every terminal on every deck lit up with a single word. Revision. Jane leaned forward. What the hell does that mean? Before I could answer, the black ships sent a direct transmission. Not through comms, through the Forge itself. They hijacked our central architecture like it was a toy. Every screen on the station filled with static. Then a voice, layered, masculine, but echoing like it came from inside the brain. Not loud, not aggressive, just, sure. You were never meant to pass. Your trial was premature. The galaxy was not ready for your kind. We will correct this error. They called themselves the Sendari, an offshoot from a species that had once stood trial in the time before the observers formalized their protocols. They had survived not through honor or compliance, but through isolation, arrogance, and the use of backdoor observer systems. They weren't failed, they weren't passed. They were exempt. A clerical void in the architecture of galactic evolution. A ghost civilization, unseen, unjudged. And now they believed we had stolen their seat. Their transmission continued. We were the architects of survival. Not peacekeepers, not destroyers. The Forge was never meant for your bloodline. Your kind was a simulation. You were not supposed to succeed. I stepped forward, toward the command display, and answered. You had your chance. You chose to hide. We chose to build. The Forge is ours now. Earn it or get out of the way. A pause. Then, we do not take. We erase. 3 minutes later, we lost Ring 6. Not from an attack, not from a weapon, from history. 1 second, the entire Ring's systems were online. 12,000 residents, habitat domes, schools, water processing. The next, gone. Not destroyed, just deleted. Every record, every trace. Sensor logs showed no explosions, no movement, just a null zone where the Ring used to be. Our internal footage cut out at once. People blinking, walking, laughing, and then just gone. No debris, no screaming, no blood, like they were never born. Jane stared at the void. That's not possible. They didn't kill us, I whispered. They're rewriting us. I sounded the alarm across all rings. Emergency lockdown, fleet mobilization. But even then, I knew the truth. There is no defense against being forgotten. The Council tried to vote on a response. Of course they did. They argued whether we should open a channel, offer diplomacy, beg for understanding. I walked into the chamber mid-debate. No ceremony, no patience. They don't want to speak, I said. They want to reset the timeline to erase our existence. Theron Jass, yes, still around, now under probation but slithering in committees, raised his hand. And how do you know that? I turned to him slowly. Because I heard it in their voice. I slammed a data drive onto the table. That was the tone of something that never considered us real. We activated the Forge's last defense layer, the resonance grid. A failsafe built into the structure by the observers. It was never explained, never accessed, just listed as Defensive Contingency Omega. The engineers called it the Ghost Wall, a ripple field across the outer rings, designed to mask presence, distort telemetry, and reflect signals back onto attackers, confusing any AI-guided weaponry or psychic interface systems. But the Sendari, they weren't using weapons. They were using narrative, history manipulation. They didn't need to fire missiles. They just needed to make the galaxy forget we mattered. I stood with Rika in the old observation platform of Ring 1, watching the stars shimmer behind the forge's rotating spine. "Feels like we're standing on someone else's grave," she muttered. "We are," I said. She lit a cigarette. Illegal in sealed sections, but nobody cared now. "You think they're bluffing?" she asked. "No." She took a drag. "Then how do you fight an enemy that doesn't kill you, just rewrites reality around you?" I looked out at the void and answered, "You burn your name into the universe so deep that even they can't scrape it off." We began broadcasting, all channels, all frequencies. We dumped every record of the Forge, the trials, Renner, the failures, the observer logs, everything, into the public lattice. We hijacked civilian relays, smuggled drives into border stations, uploaded pulses into passing trade vessels. We turned our truth into a contagion. Every story, every file, every scar, released. We stopped trying to protect the future and started infecting the present, because the Sendari couldn't erase what had already been shared. Then, they spoke again. "Persistence is not legacy. Desperation is not worth. This is your final notification. Revision in progress." 3 more ships appeared, not in space, inside the Forge, just blinked into the inner rings like they'd always been there. They didn't attack, they didn't move, but every system around them began to flicker. Screens showed the wrong dates, logs rewrote themselves, names of crew vanished from rosters. People began to forget each other, small things first, childhoods, friends, then lovers, then family, identity decay. I gave the order. No committees, no votes. War protocol. Our defense fleet launched. I personally flew the lead. Jane wanted to stop me. "Your command now," I looked at him. "Then let me lead." He didn't argue. We engaged the Sendari intrusion ships with everything we had. Particle torpedoes, disruptor beams, electronic warfare payloads. Nothing connected. Every weapon phased through them, until we switched tactics. We uploaded a mass emotional burst into the comm channels, a recorded mosaic of Earth's history. Birth, grief, laughter, war, peace, hope, not commands, not threats, humanity. And the first Sendari ship flinched. It didn't die, but it cracked. Its structure twisted as if it recoiled. The second ship backed out of the Forge. The third collapsed in on itself, folding into a gravity knot of its own making. They weren't immune. They just didn't understand us. And now, for the first time, they felt us. We followed up with what Renner left behind. The archive pulse. A hidden failsafe built into the Forge's communication lattice. One message, locked by his final command authority, never played until now. We broadcast it. It wasn't strategy. It wasn't technical. It was just him. To whoever thinks they own the right to erase what they never earned, know this. We didn't ask for the trial, but we faced it. We didn't ask for power, but we earned it. We didn't ask for legacy, but we built it. And if the galaxy can't accept that, then it can burn around us. Because we will remain. The final Sendari ship shattered, not from a weapon, but from rejection. The Forge denied their protocol. The observer grid reclassified them as hostile. And for the first time in recorded history, a species was not erased. They were excluded, judged, and forgotten. We floated in silence, not cheering, not celebrating, just remembering. 12,000 souls were gone. An entire ring lost, but not in vain. Because this time, The cost bought us something more than survival. It bought us permanence. The next day, a new message appeared in the forge's central atrium, etched in stone, no signature, just 3 words: "Final phase ready." The message burned on every screen across the forge: "Final phase ready." No explanation, no voice, no timer, just a summons. Jane stood at the heart of the command core, staring at the pulsing phrase on the primary holoscreen. He didn't move, didn't speak. We both knew what this meant. This wasn't another attack, not another test. This was the end. The platform that emerged from beneath the forge wasn't visible to the naked eye. It didn't unfold or rise. It simply was, like it had always been there, but only now decided to let us notice. A single bridge extended out from the core ring, a walkway of shimmering crystal, arching into open space, unsupported, unprotected, ending at a small platform floating in the void. At its center, a chair, not a throne, not a command seat, just a chair. Again. I went alone, not because I was ordered, but because someone had to. This wasn't about hierarchy, it was about presence, one last step into the unknown. The bridge didn't shake beneath my boots, no wind, no hum, just stars above and the forge behind me, and ahead, the quietest place in the galaxy. I sat. The moment I did, the void around me bent, but not visually, not spatially, temporally. Time fell away. I saw Earth again, not from orbit, from memory. I saw the sun through the cracked visor of my childhood scout suit, running through dust storms on Mars colony trails. I saw my father's boots pacing outside the oxygen dome, muttering about taxes and mistakes. I saw my first kill, my last, the people I saved, the ones I couldn't. I saw Renner, sitting, quiet, proud, never bitter, just watching. Then I saw the forge, not the one we built, but 1,000 versions. In one it was a weapon, in another a cathedral, in another abandoned, in another shattered. Every possible future, every forked path, every choice we might make. And then the voice came, not from the stars, from within. There are no more enemies, no more trials, no more guardians. You are now what we were. The memories of the observers came pouring in, not as facts, not as stories, as weight, species they had tested, species they had erased, species they had wept for. I felt it all. A civilization that turned its oceans into fire to eliminate dissent. Another that achieved intergalactic peace, and then chose extinction out of boredom. Another that ascended to pure energy, only to collapse from the loneliness of eternity. They weren't gods. They were witnesses, archivists, watchers, and now they were gone. Will you watch? That was the question. Not will you lead, not will you rule, but will you witness? Will you carry the echo forward? I thought of everything. The war, the sabotage, the betrayal, the forge's near collapse, and how, despite it all, we built, we endured, we remembered, because that's who we are. We carry forward. I answered, yes. The stars collapsed, not into black holes, into data. Thousands of luminous threads unraveling across the dark, each one pulsing with moments, civilizations long gone, dreams unfinished, failures, triumphs, glimpses of life and death scattered across eons. They rushed into me, not to overwhelm, but to entrust. I wasn't chosen to be a leader. I was chosen to be a lighthouse, to keep the galaxy lit, to remember. I opened my eyes. I was back on the bridge, the chair gone, the message gone, and the forge different. Not larger, not changed, just awake. Jane was the first to meet me. He didn't speak, just saw my face. Then he nodded slow and deep. He knew. We gathered the commanders, the engineers, the civilians, the council. I spoke one sentence. The trials are over. We are the keepers now. The next few days passed like smoke. Word spread, fast, across the colonies, across outposts, across rival factions. Everyone had the same reaction. So what now? And for the first time in history, there was no enemy to answer that for us. No war to define us. No invader to unite us. No crisis to scare us into action. Just a single question. What do we do with forever? The council fractured within a week. Half wanted to expand, push into dead space, take what others left behind. Another faction wanted to close the gates, seal the forge, turn inward. Some wanted to profit, others to worship. Jane stood in the middle of it all, unmoved. He issued the new directive. We will remember. Not in prayer, not in war, in structure. He opened the vault. Built into the core of the forge, it was the deepest chamber. The archive. A living record of every species the observers had judged. We didn't hide it. We invited the galaxy to come see, to walk among the ruins, to listen to the echoes. We built schools, forums, observation decks that showed not just stars, but stories. And slowly, word spread. The galaxy came to us, curious, cautious, fearful, inspired. Old empires sent envoys, new ones sent children, and one by one they walked the archive, and left changed. 10 years passed, then 20, then 50. Jane died in his sleep. They held the ceremony in the outer ring. A garden had been grown there, beneath a clear dome, beneath alien trees and Martian soil. No guns, no salutes, just silence. A long one. I watched from above. Old now, but not broken. They call me the last witness, and maybe that's what I am. But not because I'm the oldest. Not because I saw the wars. Not because I passed the trials. Because I still remember Renner's words, when he looked into the darkness and chose to stay behind. We didn't ask for legacy, but we built it. Now I sit where he once sat, in the silent chamber. No guards, no glory. Just stars, just stories, just time. And I wait. For the next ones, who will arrive from a broken system, or a dying sun, or a ship too small to matter? And they'll ask, what is this place? And I'll say, this is the forge. This is where we chose to stop surviving and started becoming. And maybe they'll pass. Maybe not. But I'll be here, like Renner was, to watch, to remember, to carry the echo forward.